Hello, my name is Ana Paula Bispo da Silva. I'm from State University of Paraíba. I will present the work Old Techniques, New Competences, Rebuilding Historical Instruments to Teach and Learn Physics. The co-authors of this work are José Antônio Ferreira Pinto, Samira Ruda Vicente, and Gerson Gonçalves. We are members of the research group in History of Science and Science Teaching. This is the summary of the presentation. First, I would like to show you from where we are. Then I'll talk to you about the group, its objectives, methods, and strategies of research. Then I'll bring the empirical case study, which is subject of this work. Finally, I'll bring some considerations about the use of the historical investigative approach and teachers in training courses. We are in the northeast of Brazil, in Paraíba. I suppose you know, but Paraíba is in Newton Principia. I used to start my history of physics classes telling to students that the northeast of Brazil is in the great moments of history of science, as Pernambuco in Darwin and Ceará in Einstein. The research group was created in 2007. It is part of the Center of Science and Technology and it's linked to the Department of Physics. It is composed of professors from Physics Department, teachers in service, and students from the bachelor course, Teachers in Training. The research group has two research lines that involves history and philosophy of science and teacher education. Here you can see José Antônio, and here is Samira, two of the co-authors. What we do at GESEM is to define a historical case study, to analyze it using the modern historiography of science that emphasize some points like avoid anachronism, to show social and cultural influences and controversies. When we complete the analysis, we design and plan the teaching unit. To the unit, I'm very resistant to frame it inside only one learning theory, but I think we intend to establish interaction with the students, avoid the traditional model teacher-centered classes. With this end, we try to include questions and problems to be debated and answered. The historical investigative approach, that is the subject of this work, is the union of modern historiography of science and reconstruction of historical apparatus or experiments to compose an inquiry-based lesson plan to science education. The empirical case study that was subject of this work was developed by Gerson. He chose Volta Sampaio as the historical episode. Gerson is a teacher in training physics and member of GESEM since 2015. He already has a technical expertise with electronics and woodwork. He developed his inquiry-based lesson plan during a special program to teachers in training, acting with high school students in 3 different moments, 3 workshops with different classes and public schools. Following the strategies to the historical investigative approach, after to choose the historical episode, Gerson rebuilt the historical apparatus based on Volta's report. To do this, he needed to study the concepts, the methodology, and Volta's procedure. After that, he planned the lesson plan, in this case, the workshop, and adapt the historical apparatus to a didactical version. Before and after the workshop, Gerson presented the apparatus and his considerations to the group. Members of the group helped him to solve problems and to think about the lesson plan and the apparatus. Teacher in service helped him to think about the best way to deal with students and school routine. Some details about the historical episode. As already said, Gerson was aware of this history. 2 main historical problems are involved in the context of Volta Sampaio. First, is electricity intrinsic to animals and to human beings? Second, has electricity by friction the same nature that animal electricity in lightning? Searching for a way to interpret Galvani's experiment with frogs, Volta built his electrical apparatus. The pile was a columnar machine of cells with silver plus copper plus a sponge layer with saline solution. I put in here the link of a video that we created to explain Volta Sampaio and the context of the invention. So Gerson started his work. First, he used his preconceptions about operation of a pile made with potatoes and put the cells as zinc plus sponge plus copper, because he thought that the sponge had the same effect as the potato. The pile had no result. So he read Volta's report and he understood how to build the cells. Then he thought that was necessary a central pivot to fix the columns, like the image in the museum, and he made a hole in the cells and put a central axis. However, when he took the pile to the workshop, students didn't get to make it work. It was hard to put the cells and the pivot, and they didn't get to make it work and to light on a LED. So Gerson took these two problems to the group's meeting and figured out how to solve them. Based on his current knowledge on electronics and modern equipment like a digital multimeter, Gerson concluded that the metal plates should be larger to generate a higher electric current and to light on a lamp. This was against Volta's consideration. In spite of that, Gerson built another pile using larger plates. To remove the central axis, he made a wood wall to fit the column of the cells. With this new model, he got to light on some LED and to show the pile working to students. The new model was more practical to teach. However, it was far from the historical model. Gerson returned to the historical source to get a new model. Looking at the historical images of the pile and Volta's report, he concluded that if he got more cells instead of larger ones, he would have the same effect. Then he built a third model using smaller metallic plates and a thin wall of PVC to fix the column. Based on this new apparatus, Gerson explained how pile worked and compared it with the modern batteries. Students understood the current knowledge of electricity. However, history was not part or even necessary to the discussion. The workshop focused on the results of the pile and emphasized the empirical aspect of science, like a traditional class. In conclusion, we can say that the historical investigative approach was important to the teacher in training to understand the pile's concept and operations. Technical skills were essential to rebuild the apparatus and to think the didactical version. To rebuild the historical apparatus prepared the teacher in training to overcome students' questionings. The group environment prepared the teacher in training to get self-confident in classroom. In brief, the in-training teacher's participation throughout the process was essential to deal with a historical investigative approach. However, we note that although history was important to plan the lesson, it was not present in classroom. Empirical process was reinforced in the classroom and the history of science was just an illustration. Epistemological contribution as the possibility of more than one interpretation to the pile's operation was not emphasized during the workshop. This shows us a gap in teachers in training courses that should be subject of more investigation. The integration of epistemological aspects of science to the experimental science classes. How to deal with it? This is what we are trying to investigate with other teachers in training. Thanks for your attention. I look forward to your comments and questions and invite you to visit our site.